Hello, Culture Matters podcast. Here's a quote before episode. The tyrant dies, and his rule is over. The martyr dies, and his rule begins. Soren Kierkegaard, The Journals of Kierkegaard. Today marks a tribute to one of our regulars on the Culture Matters podcast, someone deeply important to Culture Matters and to the Culture Matters podcast. If you listen to the show, you know our purpose is to uncover the genius of our guest with the goal to make curiosity cool. And the tribute that this episode today is about, who it's about, they made making curiosity cool easy. They made it easy to uncover their genius. I'm talking about the one and only Kevin DeLory, Chief Lending Officer at EPM, father, husband, amazing one in a million human being. We lost this week. Kevin has been a staple on the Culture Matters podcast. I was preparing to do this tribute to a beautiful life, an unbelievable leader that we got to work alongside for years in the trenches, fighting the good fight, making the world a better place with one customer helped at a time, one team meeting at a time, one huddle at a time. I was researching to prepare, looking through the catalog. If you listen to the Culture Matters podcast, over 70 of our guests have been on between 2 and 10 times. And Kevin was one of those staple friends. If you haven't listened to season 10, episode 115, The Chase is Not for Money Anymore was the title. Go listen to that. And I'll go through the whole list. But who was Kevin DeLory? From my learnings from having him on the Culture Matters podcast, he started his career out, believe it or not, easy to believe this one, as a teacher. And I believe it was history. And damn, I can tell you, close to 30 years in his industry, the mortgage industry, as an account executive, area sales manager, regional, working his way all the way up with his amazing tribe to chief lending officer of EPM. Kevin was a teacher. I wrote a list of things, what I learned from Kevin, the value of a team. I learned that caring is in us or it isn't, right? Are you someone that's listening to this that cares about your team? Kevin cared about his team. He cared to the point of asphyxiation. There's no, in my book, there's no such thing as caring too much. Kevin cared. He was all in. I learned ownership from Kevin. I learned team huddles, the importance of team huddles, to see the energy and be a part of the energy when you were with Kevin and Kevin's people, the people that I learned loyalty and tenure, the people that he rose up through his career, right? One of the things that you learn about great leaders is that they're people stay with them. People want to follow them. People enjoy being led by them. Kevin was one of those people. If you haven't listened to episode on 300, excuse me, 558, season 47, episode 558 of the Culture Matters podcast called Know Your People with Kevin DeLory and Kenny Phillips. Kevin and Kenny met, if I understand correctly, in 2004, 2003, for at New Century, a company they worked with together. And 20 plus years later, they're still working together, working in the trenches, being team players, leading by example, showing the way, as we like to say at EPM, struggling well, unifying through collaboration, and damn well owning unique. These were very different people that managed to work not only together, but with many other very different people and continue to work with them for years. And what does that say? It says leadership, it says mentorship, it says humility and menteeship. I learned you only fail if you quit. Never stop learning. The value of brotherhood. Culture. It was culture case study to observe and be around Kevin and his team, the way that he showed up, the way that his attention to detail, his interest in problem solving, his passion and energy and enthusiasm. That's what we live for. That's what we live off of. If you don't know what an account executive is, because you're not in the mortgage industry, that was the first role, as far as I understand, even and it's no surprise to me, if Kevin had a background in teaching, right? What does a teacher do? They prepare lessons. Well, first they know their stuff. They know their subject matter. They study, they analyze, they digest, they synthesize, they integrate the lessons as a part of who they are so that they can show up, share the lesson to the group, to the students. Because if they don't know what they're doing, how could the teacher hold their students to account when the student is not understanding the question or not understanding the subject matter and isn't prepared for the test? Well, they can't. So they know their stuff. Kevin knew his stuff. In fact, I don't know, that wasn't one of the titles, but he knew it. He knew his stuff. But as a teacher, you prepare, you embody the lessons, you know your stuff, you you share, you teach, attempt to infuse your passion in the subject matter into a student who may or may not care, who may or may not know to care, who may or may not be in a position based on their personal life to be in the best position possible to care about the subject matter, right? Based on the circumstances of a student's life, what's going on at home, and so on. They may or may not be in the best place, the best position to listen, to learn, to try to learn, to care to learn. A teacher, great teachers like Kevin, meet the students where they are. They go from group and the embodiment of the lesson and the infusion of passion to the individual, one on one, listening and understanding, getting to know the student to figure out what the student needs to be successful. It's no surprise that Kevin's background was as a teacher because an account executive, they are stewards, they are liaisons as it relates to the products and the their broker partners, their partners, the person that's actually working with the borrowers to get their whole, to get their loan, to get their dreams accomplished. Those brokers are relying on the account executives, the teachers, the mentors, the advisors, the partners for knowledge, for products, for insights, for strategies. And from my observation, learning from great, competent, passionate, like Kevin and others, account executives, they know their stuff. They're teachers. They're all in with their broker partners. They're passionate. There are videos from Empower Brokers of brokers saying to Kevin how they didn't have a lot of business when they started, but they believed in him and they believed in EPM and they believed in Eddie, the CEO of EPM, and they believed in the culture that Kevin was creating and a part of and leading and stewarding as a chief lending officer. So that made them want to aim higher. That made them as a student in a sense, right? New to the industry, passionate to help their customers, but new to the industry. desiring relationship, desiring resources, and desiring reasons beyond their own personal reasons to be successful. They were inspired by Kevin. I watched this in a video online. They were inspired by Kevin and who he was and how he showed up. And Kevin, as the teacher, met them where they were and believed in them. He was a believer in people. I've learned loyalty from Kevin, honesty from Kevin, competition, how to compete, how to have an edge, how to be passionate and purposeful in that competition. Attention to detail, I mentioned, mentorship, I mentioned, ownership. I learned redemption in one of the earlier podcasts. The chase is not for money anymore. Episode 115, season 10. I remember Kevin talking about getting through the Great Recession, losing material objects, getting over infatuated with the money and with the potential to earn, and not being able to fill up his car's gas or bringing a tank of gas. So I learned redemption. Pride comes before the fall, but the man is revealed in what happens after the fall. And Kevin was a leader. He redeemed himself. He started a family. He became someone that so many people in his industry admired and wanted to be around. I learned always learn. He was always reading. I learned intensity. I'm laughing because you just had to be there to understand. Results matter. No excuses. Sacrifice. I learned to be a fighter. If you don't know, I shaved my head a couple years ago to support Kevin DeLory when he first found out that we had cancer. He had cancer, and I shaved my head. And he fought and beat it. And we talked about that on episode 371, season 31, The Other Side. If you haven't listened to episode 146, The Power of Positivity, season 13 on the Culture Matters podcast, go listen to that after this. Or season 15, episode 175, Survival Instincts is the title of that episode with Kevin DeLory. Or season 16, episode 186, How Far You've Come is the title of that episode. Or season 23, episode 275, Be willing be willing to do what you ask. That's the title. Be willing to do what you ask. Like be willing to do what you ask of your people. That was a huge component to what made Kevin a great teacher, mentor, leader, and not only account executive, but leader of the idea of what it means to be an account executive, to be that partner to the brokers to ultimately help people like you and me, everyday people, achieve home ownership. Because that's ultimately what the product of that process, of that partnership is. You'll learn about that in episode 275. Be willing to do what you ask. Understanding leadership, understanding what show the way actually means, understand what struggling well actually means, and what behaviors, habits, and rituals and philosophy needs to be embodied to be a great partner to people. Kevin was a partner to EPM, more than just a partner. He was a spiritual partner to the purpose of EPM. Episode 371, The Other Side, season 31, and episode 558, season 47, with Kenny Phillips, someone that, they met over 20 years ago working in the field, and they continue to grow together. And that episode is a beautiful example of what it means to build partnership, to build team, to build relationships, to create and curate a culture where people know what should be done, people are aware of what shouldn't, and the team works to create order where there's chaos to succeed, where there's a brotherhood, there's a vision, and there's a mission, and there are values that are lived or there aren't. And if they aren't, people won't stay. People will be asked to leave. They're not fit. Kevin DeLory is not with us now, so he passed away. But like I started this quote, the tyrant dies and his rule is over. The martyr dies and his rule begins. How Kevin lived, he's going to live forever on this podcast. He's going to live forever in the hearts and minds of his family and forever through the spirit of EPM and all the good deeds that EPM, who many of the leadership and team of EPM has been on the Culture Matters podcast. You haven't heard Chris Gordon or Kenny Phillips or Frank Franz or Phil Mancuso or Eddie Perez, and the list goes on the Culture Matters podcast. Tune in. So many, even third parties that have been a part of that journey. Darius Mershazadeh and Michael Lasso, and there's Jason. Oh man, I got to get Jason on the show. Oh my God. Um, so many great people have been on the Culture Runners podcast and that knew Kevin, were influenced by Kevin, and could testify and have brought up who he was and why he was great and what they learned from him, both directly and indirectly. He's been brought up so many times in the Culture Matters podcast by other people, and I wanted to. It was important to me to record this. It's a terrible loss to lose guests let on the Culture Matters podcast because there have been a few that we have lost that have passed away over the years. But this one is a tough one. Having worked for years alongside Kevin DeLory. Please go listen to episode 115, 146, 175, 186, 275, 371, and 558. And share this with someone that matters to you.